Hey everybody, it's Lori, and I am here today with my March reading wrap up. In the month of March, I finished 5 books. 4 of them were audiobooks, and one was a physical book. So I'm just going to get started with the one fiction title I read, and then we'll get into my other 4 nonfiction books. So the fiction book that I read this month was Homegoing by Ya Gassi, and I believe I saw a recommendation for this book by T from the channel The Nappy Headed Jojoba, and she really enjoyed it and spoke highly of it. So I decided to go ahead and put a hold on it at the library so that when it was available, I could listen to this one. This is a very epic family story over multiple generations, starting in Ghana, and several branches of the family as the institution of slavery starts to move the family away from where they originated. So I think there's like 4 or 5 different generations that we go through, and this is kind of hard to keep track because we have some generational history that we find out as well. So somewhere in the 5 generations of people in this family and have been kind of separated apart for various reasons. And so it begins in Africa, but by the end, several of the descendants are in America and do go back to see the area they had come from. Their family had come from back in Africa towards the end of the book. So it's very epic in scale and so well written. It is full of kind of more adult thematic things. I mean, because we are talking about issues of slavery, so there's going to be discussion of rape and things like that as well. And, just like lots of pain and suffering and physical trauma and emotional trauma all wrapped up in there. So it's not one that I would immediately suggest to younger people or people that might struggle a lot reading something with all of that in it. But I thought it was a really well done book. One of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. My other 4 books were all nonfiction books. So the first one I'm going to talk about is actually maybe not quite a book. Anyway, I got this through Audible. It was one of their available to everyone things, and it is called Fauci by Michael Spector, and he's a journalist that has known Dr. Fauci for a long time. So it is an interesting mix of kind of the history of Dr. Fauci's life and so forth, also mixed with interviews with Dr. Fauci and with other people as well, surrounding kind of like why Dr. Fauci is so influential and what his influence has been. It was very interesting because honestly, I never had heard of Dr. Fauci prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, I think there's many Americans like me, but his background in public health has included the AIDS epidemic, and he was pretty highly criticized during that time for not making experimental treatments more available. But he listened to the concerns. So he actually became very friendly with some of the people that criticized him most harshly at that point in time. So it was just a very interesting kind of biography slash, I don't know quite how to like interview style journalistic piece. I believe it was like somewhere between 3 and 4 hours long, so it wasn't a super long thing. But it was definitely longer than like an article, but maybe not full on book. But anyway, so that was Fauci by Michael Spector, and I enjoyed that. I learned a lot about Dr. Fauci in that, and also just a lot about epidemics and disease, public health sorts of things. Next, I listened to Outer Order, Inner Calm by Gretchen Rubin. I really have enjoyed all of the Gretchen Rubin books that I have read or listened to over the years. I started out with her book, The Happiness Project. I listened to the audio. I also have a paper copy of it as well. And that really influenced me quite a bit, that book. I still struggle with kind of the idea of happiness, but I have done a number of things to increase my happiness through some of the things I've learned from Gretchen Rubin. So, Outer Order, Inner Calm is kind of about decluttering, but it's not the sort of decluttering book that you often see in the clean up your life kind of style books, the self help, whatever you want to call them. It's not all about, it's not necessarily about minimalism. It's not necessarily about minimalism or anything like that. It's about deciding if having this outer order is going to increase your inner calm. So there's no standard, everyone should keep their counters clear all the time, but she kind of steps through really thinking about what is going to increase your inner calm, what's going to help you most, so that you don't just jump into the things that everybody says you should do when maybe that's not something that bothers you at all. So that everyone's version of outer order is going to look a little different based upon their own temperament and personality. So I enjoyed that. It was not a very long audiobook again, but I felt like I gained a little bit of insight into how I might improve things for myself. I've also read, I think it's called The Four Tendencies, maybe. It's kind of about personalities and how you react to things. And so she integrates that a little bit into this book as well. So knowing the type of person I am, I like lists, don't get me wrong, I love lists. But sometimes writing out a to-do list is too demanding for me. I'll struggle against that because I don't want to be told what to do even by myself. So I kind of liked her idea, and I haven't tried this yet, of making a might do list, things I might do, that I could look at when I want to work on a project or whatever, or feel like I have some motivation for something. I could look at a list of might do's rather than to do's, and just kind of the mental shift of that. So I did enjoy Outer Order, Inner Calm as well. The next book I read was Your Blue Flame by Jennifer Fulwiler. Jennifer Fulwiler is a convert to Catholicism from atheism, and she had a blog. I mean, she may still have the blog. I don't really know. I used to follow her blog regularly years and years ago, and I still follow her on Twitter and things like that. She also is now a stand-up comic. She does stand-up comedy. And I'm not sure if it's still available, but I believe Amazon Prime at least had her comedy special that she produced on there a few months ago. So if you want to look it up, check for Jennifer Fulwiler. The comedy special is called The Naughty Corner, but don't put The Naughty Corner into Amazon because I'm not sure what you would get, and I'm sure you'd get a lot of sketchy things that way. So basically, this is a book about finding your purpose in life. And I almost just had to put this down because early on, there's exercises that you're supposed to do before you move on. And going back to my whole personality type of not liking to be told what to do, I wanted the perfect time to do the exercises, so I set it aside. And then I realized I'm never going to pick it back up if I force myself to do the exercises. So I figure I can always go back and do the exercises in here when I feel like it's the time that I need to do that. But I enjoyed reading the book overall. I like the fact that Jennifer points out that your kind of purpose in life may change throughout your life. So it's something to consider more than once. It's not like you decide what your blue flame is, what you're meant to do, and you just do that. It can change. So right now, I don't really feel like I am needing to figure out a blue flame. I guess my blue flame right now, to some extent, is educating my kids and getting them into college and out of the house. Now, once that happens, I'm probably going to have to go back and figure out what it is that I'm meant to do, because I've been doing this for forever. 16 years. So I don't know what I'm going to do after that. And maybe I'll go back and do those exercises then. But I liked that she pointed out that they're, again, very similar to the Gretchen Rubin. There's not one way to have a blue flame or one way to do things. She has this little sleep personality test that she came up with. It's kind of like a Myers-Briggs style sleep test. And so I found it hilarious because, I am a similar sleep type to Jennifer. She had one of the four things different from me, but my husband is 100% different from me. So, he falls asleep quickly. I take a long time to fall asleep. He wakes up, easily. You could probably, bang a drum next to my head when I'm deep in sleep and I wouldn't wake up. So, it just was very funny that my husband and I are so very different in terms of sleep. But that sleep and whether you're a morning or a night owl can affect how you do your blue flame. So you don't necessarily have to get up at 5:30 in the morning. Like a lot of self-help books will tell you, if you just get up at 5:30 in the morning and do these 5 things, the rest of the day will be just fabulous. If I get up at 5:30 in the morning and do 5 things, the rest of the day I'm not going to get anything else done because I'm done. So it's nice to know that I'm not the only person that isn't like that typical morning person, go do these things. But I enjoyed that about this book, and just her discussion of the ways that your blue flame or your purpose in life might be work, it might be volunteerism, it might be a hobby, and that's okay. You don't have to make a living off of what your blue flame is. So I enjoyed this book. I probably will go back to it in a few years when my kids are going off to college and I need to figure out what to do next with my life. And then the last book I listened to was Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And this is another nonfiction book. It is written as a letter to his son about growing up and his personal Black experience. And so he talks a lot about the things that affected him throughout his youth and into his adulthood, the kind of different societal things. And he also talks about how his experience as a Black man was different than his father's experience as a Black man, and how his son's experience will be different from his. But the importance of kind of knowing the story. And it's just very poetically written. I mean, just wonderful prose in this book. And I picked this one up because I think I had put it on my holds list at the library because it was suggested in so many of the books on racism and systemic racism and white privilege and those sorts of things that I've read in the past year. So many of them reference this book as a book you should read, or as a book that they had used, or as further reading, that sort of thing, that I had just gone ahead and put it on. I didn't know a whole lot about it going into it, but I really appreciated how clearly he expresses all of the things that he wants his son to understand. And just, it's an interesting look at a life that is very different than the life that I have led, just based on basic demographic differences. So I guess that is it. This one's kind of short because I didn't read that many books last month. But I hope you enjoyed. If you have anything you'd like to talk to me about, feel free to do so in the comments. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.